everything you're doing, process, people, products, and do it differently in terms of thinking about it in an innovative way. So for these entrepreneurs, how do they take that word innovation and jumpstart a business, whatever that means to you? Share with me. And this time, why don't we start in the middle with Mark?
So I think you have to, I mentioned this when I answered the question a second ago about innovation, that we focus on people. So I think you got to be focused on the business or the sector that you're operating in, and figure out what it is that's, that makes that sector go, right? And for us, or actually some of the things that don't make that sector go, what are the challenges? It's about separation and being different if you're going to be successful. So I operate in a crowded space, meaning that there's 1,000 outsourced providers of call center services. And they all typically go about it, in the same way. So I had to think about something that I thought was going to be effective, not only in helping us to attract new customers, but also that was going to help us with driving our business model. And again, our most precious and valuable key asset was our people. So I looked at that one asset and said, okay, how can we, treat it differently, act differently around it, do whatever to make it perform for us both in terms of being able to get new business as well as, having our company be more efficient and to drive processes to get that turnover, which the leading, I think the leading cost factor in a call center business is turnover and all the training that comes out of that. And so I needed to figure out how I was going to get at that. And so innovation, while we might think about it as, okay, how do we create the next whiz-bang kind of idea, concept, in some instances it can be very simple and basic and, and focused that can make the difference. And I'll just conclude by saying that, the real test for this for me is that when we were able to bring potential clients, prospective clients in to view our site and to see our company and how it operated, and that I can get a real feel for how it is that they felt about having visited and the prospect of doing business with us versus those that we were competing with. Very tangible difference. And it was all around this one concept about how the atmosphere made them feel as to how we were treating our people. So, all that said, I think innovation can mean a lot of things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, figure out something that's whiz-bang. It can be right before you.
Right.
Mark actually shared a lot of what I would have shared in that exact same answer, and that is this. Figure out what is not being met in that particular industry. That's where your opportunity for innovation is, and that's the simplest formula that you can use for it. Whatever is not being met, whether it's a customer expectation or whether a service is not being met within a particular industry that's already saturated. In the food industry, one of the biggest complaints that most people have, particularly in QSR, is service. I have to spend my money with someone who's not even interested in engaging me as a customer, and we've all had frustrating experiences with that. And the thing that differentiates Chick-fil-A from other companies is that they don't expect that kind of an experience. As a matter of fact, when it turns out to be an unfriendly experience, it stands out because it's uncommon. So innovation is really about figuring out what is not being met from a customer expectation standpoint, and then crafting or building a model around meeting that expectation, and you'll win your customers. One of the biggest success stories that's come out recently is Zappos. Anybody familiar with Zappos? Here is an Amazon-type service provider, and yet they are, their customers are raving customers, and they built their model around service. No hassle returns. You're going to pay full price for whatever you get. You can bank on that. You're not going to shop that site if you're looking for bargains. You're going to shop that site if you're looking for service. And what they have done is built a model around that. So innovation in any industry, whether it's saturated or even if it's not, is really about figuring out what's not being met and then filling that gap. The second caution, or the caution that I'd give you is that people may look out in the market and see that there is a need that's not being met in the market. But you always have to figure out is there a market that's not being met in that need? Meaning this, if an idea is not out there and you think, I'm going to go and create this product and provide this service, but there's not a customer base for that, then it's pointless. So innovation is not just coming up with something new, it's coming up with something new that is needed. And that's going to, you're going to have a demand for. There are a lot of failed companies and a lot of skeletons of companies along the road for ideas that were great ideas, but there was no market for it.
Wow, and that is a first.
Well, the way I would answer that question, then, you know, a good idea and a great idea, I think you can come up with saying, I want to do something good, but how do I want to make sure that it really maximizes all of the potential and opportunities I have? And I think something has to be done before you do that. I think you have to have a vision. I think even Morehouse has it here, this strategic business plan competition. You have to be thinking future. My father told me, he says, there are two things in life. Either you're moving forward or you're moving backward. There's no neutral. So you've got to be able to, in this business world, to always be anticipating and thinking of the future. And that's why most small businesses, and just in my experience as being a mentor for a small business, one of the things that I find out that most of them are deficient in is they don't have what we call a business plan, a vision, where they want to go, what they want to do, and what is the legacy they want to leave as far as that. So I think in order to have that great idea, you have to have a vision.
And that's, you know, having a need for it. But I think the innovation, we also have to come into the idea of, you know, like you said, what are your giftings and talents? You know, who's going to have to be there? So if you nurture those giftings and talents, a lot of times that's where that natural innovation, you know, comes to bear. Because innovation is not necessarily repeating, or I always say monkey see, monkey do society. But it's having those giftings and talents and nurturing those gifts and talents that, you know, as you continue to, you know, innovate out of those things and surround yourself with people with other giftings and talents, it's going to bring all that together to really foster that collective innovation. And like I said, when you look at those other giftings and talents, you put those together, that solidifies leadership. And just like the gentleman here, it all boils down to leadership. And one of the great books that I've always been recommending, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, to categorize, because it's not only good enough to have a great idea, whatever, someone has to lead that company. And someone has to have a vision, not only today, but 5 or 10 years down the road. What is the plan? And like I said, a blueprint of how you're going to get there.
Right, that's a huge buzzword. Even I'm in the philanthropy space, and we're just now starting to figure out how do we support somebody that's a social entrepreneur. So if you were just talking about how did you say, okay, this was a good idea, now this is a great idea that somebody would actually pay for with some of those websites.
So, I mean, part of what I would love is if one or two of you who want to be entrepreneurs lean towards the social entrepreneurial side. For the same reason that they've given you on the corporate side, you have to find a need, right? How many social needs are there? Countless. So can you come up with something that meets a social need, whether it's homelessness, whether it's job training, and figure out a clever way to do that so that you can get paid in the process. And that's the future, and that's where I'm spending my time, whether it's with technology or with interesting people. I'm finding that there are high net worth individuals or foundations willing to fund social entrepreneurs where they wouldn't fund for-profits. Because they have something, there's a new buzzword, they're calling patient capital. Usually if you go to venture capital, they want their money back in 36 months. Patient capital may be 60 months, 5 years, as opposed to 3 years. They're not going to hit you with the scale every time you meet with them. Because they're going to look at double or triple bottom lines, and that is profits, people, and planet. And if you can focus on those things and become innovative with your products or services, you're going to find it's probably an easier way to get started, because there's probably more funding available for younger folks who want to get into that space.
Right. Now this one